Weather outside is frightful, but this program is so delightful. And since you know place to go, how about talking some Eagles Cowboys with Ed Werder from ESPN? Tony Cutillo has your fantasy title game lineup. And let's unwrap some coal for the Zebras. That's all right now on a Christmas edition of This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football. A deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everybody. Pat Callahan joining you for week number 16 of the National Football League and This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports and YouTube TV. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy Hanukkah to everybody as we rumble into a very rainy and then a very cold weekend that will have some effects on many, many games in the National Football League in week 16. Most of the games this weekend are on Christmas Eve, Saturday. There are 3 games on Sunday. There's even one on Monday. So you got a veritable football feast. For those of you who have the TV on 24/7, you'll be very pleased with what's going on this weekend. But some very challenging weather. We're going to talk about that. As I mentioned, Ed Werder is going to be joining me from ESPN. We're going to talk in depth about the Eagles and the Cowboys and what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys. In the last couple of weeks, they certainly have hit a major pothole in their quest to catch Philadelphia in the NFC East. So Ed will have lots of info and insight into the Cowboys as they get ready to host Philadelphia on Saturday at 4:25. Plenty of other news. We're going to talk Zebras, have to talk about that. Tony Cutillo, as I mentioned, in your fantasy title game, Tony's last appearance for the year, so won't be a dry eye in the house, no doubt. And then Ryan Kramer, Sean Green's colleague with Bet SGPN and the Sports Gambling Podcast. We're going to talk about some underdogs and some amazing stats relative to how close games have been this year. But how about we bring a little Vince Lombardi in here, Xander? We talk about the week and what the hell is going on out there. Well, Jalen Hurts. Isn't that clever what I did there? Hurts strained his shoulder on, we all know the play, too. It was another zone read in which he circled to his right, and the Chicago player deliberately, in my opinion, fell on him with that upraised plain imitation look, whereas all that did is concentrate all his weight on Hurts, and really it's very fortunate that Hurts did not separate that shoulder. So Nick Sirianni's been very circumspect about that for this weekend, but it looks almost certain. Adam Schefter, among others, reporting that Gardner Minshew will get the start Saturday in Dallas. Franco Harris dies at 72. Very, very shocking, and it's a shame. Harris, born in 1950, was on his way to Pittsburgh to commemorate the retirement of his number, which took way too long. A memo to other NFL teams. Let's not wait this long, huh? And celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. What a pall now cast over that Saturday night game in Pittsburgh as the Steelers host the Las Vegas Raiders. I skipped over there. Changes needed in the game plan. I'm going to talk to Werder about this. And what I mean is a lot of talk on social media this week and on the airwaves about whether the Eagles should not have been running Hurts like they did in the game against Chicago. It did seem an odd game plan to not feature Miles Sanders against a team that is not good against the run. And instead, Hurts was throwing the ball really all over the field. They had 2 picks, too. One I didn't think was his fault. But still, an odd game plan. But you know what? The team's 13-1. And you simply, to me, it's the old saw about the good with the bad. You can't say, oh, Hurts shouldn't be running the ball. We've talked about this all season long. You can maybe reduce some of his runs, but it's too powerful an asset for the offense. Look at the quarterback draw in which he scored that touchdown. I mean, you've got to use all the weapons that you have with Jalen Hurts, and his ability to run and his power as a runner, second only to Josh Allen, in my opinion. You can't diminish it. You can't not use it. So, yes, it's very unfortunate. You could certainly make the case that in a game against Chicago with their moribund offense that maybe it wasn't needed. But you know what? It happened. he is certainly not alone amongst running quarterbacks in the league this year that have gotten hurt. We're going to talk about the officiating in the last segment. Certainly, Week 15 was by far the worst week for the Zebras in the NFL this season, with some bizarre calls in the Saturday game. Those of you got to see it on NFL Network, Indianapolis at Minnesota, some very bizarre calls there. The most microscopic of reviews relative to did Keelan Cole catch the touchdown pass with 30 seconds to go in the Raiders' eventual win over the New England Patriots, the most bizarre finish probably since the Immaculate Reception in an NFL game, that the Patriots just handed over to the Las Vegas Raiders even before overtime on the last play of regulation. But Keelan Cole, was he inbounds or not? Did the right foot come down? Very, very close. Looked to me like he was out. It looked like the foot was out. If we're going to do this Zapruder film of a review every time a play like this happens, well, then how about using your own eyes? It looks like his foot was out of bounds. It should not have been a touchdown. But they ruled touchdown on the field. Didn't see enough to overturn it. For some reason, they did not have a sideline end zone review, and thus the touchdown stood. All right. And then, baby, it's cold outside. And I mentioned that because, ladies and gentlemen, 7 of the 8 1 p.m. games to be played this Saturday will be played in temperatures under freezing, and that doesn't really tell the whole story. Buffalo at Chicago, these are wind chill numbers. Buffalo at Chicago, -11. Seattle at Kansas City, -6. New Orleans at Cleveland, the Saints are going to love this, -9. Houston at Tennessee, a balmy 5 degrees. But Vegas at Pittsburgh played at 8 o'clock. You've heard me rant about this for years, those of you who heard my radio show. That game is a Saturday night game. Christmas Eve night, the NFL is putting it on that game, Vegas and the Steelers. You can bet the Vegas Raiders, who play indoors, are just going to be just stoked beyond belief to go out in -4 degree wind chill on Christmas Eve night, 3,000 miles from their homes, to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. But there you have it. That's the National Football League. It's all about TV. They'll probably have Buffalo ratings that evening. So lots of football to be seen. Lots of cold games. And lots of wind. Tonight's game, the Jets hosting Jacksonville, that's just going to be just miserable weather conditions for anybody who's going to be out there, getting colder, and lots of wind and tremendous amounts of rain hitting the New York area. So that will probably be a low-scoring game, certainly in New York. The Eagles and the Cowboys. This is a game we're going to talk to Ed Werder about in just about 5 minutes. But let's face it, it's lost a lot of its luster. Philadelphia beat Chicago last week 25-20. As I mentioned, Hurts, we all know Hurts now has been injured, but the Eagles now come into this game with an absolutely gaudy 13-1 record. The Dallas Cowboys, meanwhile, have fallen to 10-4. Dallas has lost their last 2, and I'm anxious to talk to Ed about his opinion as to why Dallas was cruising into the last 2 weeks after demolishing Minnesota on the road 40-3. And then on Thanksgiving, they dispatched the New York Giants. And then a week later on a Sunday night, they spot Indianapolis a lead and then outscore them, score 33 points in the fourth quarter, en route to a demolition of the awful Colts. I don't even mention that game Saturday in which the Colts blew a 33-0 lead. I mean, the legacy of Matt Ryan, it's unfortunate. Ryan, a very, very good NFL quarterback. And I think he lived up to his draft status as a number 1 pick, a long, distinguished career, good passer, but without a doubt, his legacy is now strictly 28-3 and 33-0. It's incredible, isn't it? The way this league goes in terms of ironies and coincidences, that Matt Ryan would be the starting quarterback on the 2 teams that, with the greatest lead lost in both regular season and in postseason. It's just startling. It's a shame for him, but the Colts are absolutely awful. But anyway, Dallas comes off those 3 wins and then barely beats a Houston team that with a 1 win and 1 tie. I mean, Houston won 12-1 right now. But the Cowboys just didn't seemingly pay any attention to Houston. Won on an Ezekiel Elliott touchdown in the last 2 minutes. And then last week, a shocking 40-34 overtime loss in Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville's not that bad a team. I don't want to imply that. But it's simply that where the Cowboys, I mentioned last week on this show, that where the Eagles possibly looking past the Bears towards Dallas. Well, certainly it appears the Cowboys were looking past the Jaguars towards Philadelphia. And a 40-34 loss on a pass, that was not Dak Prescott's fault. That ball was thrown right into the hands of, I think it was Noah Brown, and lo and behold, no, it was either Brown or Gallup, I'm not sure which, but tipped, picked, see you later, touchdown, Jacksonville wins the game. So it's taken a lot of the luster off this game. The Eagles are going to be the number one seed. All they need to do is win one of the last three, and they are the number one seed. I certainly expect Philadelphia. Gardner Minshew, one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. I don't think the Eagles are going to win this game. I don't think they're going to win it. Now they got a backup quarterback against a team that's on its heels. Dallas playing at home. I imagine they're going to get the Cowboys' best effort. But all the Eagles then need to do is defeat either the Saints at home or the Giants at home, and they are the number one seed. They're going to do that. All right, when we get back, we're going to have Ed Werder join us from ESPN, national correspondent, and a longtime colleague of Sal's, who's out this week. But Ed's going to join us. We're going to talk about this game in some greater detail and what's going on down there in Big D. Look forward to doing that next on This Week in Pro Football.
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
Cantor, Novak, Beaver & Pike is a full-service CPA firm with offices in PA and New Jersey, offering first-rate accounting, audit, and tax services. They focus on helping clients achieve their business and financial goals, from startup operation to long-term financial planning. For more information, call Terry Cantor or Dan Pike at 215-550-2954 or on the web at cnbpcpas.com.
Are you looking for a family-friendly fitness center in the heart of Bucks County? Spring Mill Athletic Club has programs and activities to offer the whole family for every age and season. Group classes, personal training, dance academy, summer camp, and more can be found at this non-intimidating environment. Come tour Spring Mill Athletic Club today and get a free 1-week trial membership. Visit us at springmillathletic.com for more information.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan here joining you as we get ready for the Christmas weekend edition of games in the National Football League. As I mentioned earlier, they're going to be spread over Saturday, Sunday, well, starting Thursday, and then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, the games this week. Waiting on Ed Werder, hopefully, to join us. We could talk some Eagles Cowboys before we while we're waiting for Ed to join us. We were talking in the last segment about officiating And of course, I didn't mention the creme de la creme of Week 15 officiating, and that was the Sunday nighter between the Commanders and the Giants. A gripping game, really, between two middling teams, not great teams, but the officiating was absolutely egregious at the end of that game. And well, hopefully we'll get a chance maybe at the end of this segment we can ask Ed his opinions on that about officiating in general and what might happen here. There's going to be a lot of talk about officiating in the offseason this year. There seemingly always is. But the NFL kind of ducks the issue. They're kind of satisfied with the way it is. But boy, that officiating at the end of that game very well will cost Washington a playoff berth. All right, Xander, how about we bring this gentleman on, national correspondent for ESPN, long time, since 1998, and a very, very recognized visage and voice in the NFL. That's Ed Werder. Ed, how you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. It's the temperatures are below zero wind chills and probably will be on Saturday when the Eagles and Cowboys play. So I'm forever thankful to Jerry for destroying Texas Stadium and building Jerry World, as we like to call it here.
Don't you miss the old Cotton Bowl, Ed? I bet you, come on, sit out there in the Cotton Bowl in the nice 5-degree weather. What better way to spend, and as Chris Schenkel used to say, better way to spend a winter afternoon.
You first.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I have a million things I want to ask you, but we're going to focus, obviously, on this Dallas-Philadelphia game. But let me start with this, is that I mentioned in my previous segment how Dallas was just rolling along there, a 3-game segment in which they destroyed Minnesota, handled the Giants, put a 33 number on Indianapolis in the fourth quarter. And then lo and behold, the last 2 weeks, a tire has come off. How do you see the Cowboys coming into this game?
Well, I think they go into this game sort of needing to recapture their defensive identity. Jaron Kearse, the Cowboy safety, was talking about that the other day. They've lost players to injury at all 3 levels on defense. Jonathan Hankins, the player they acquired in a trade with the Raiders to help stop the run. This week they've lost Leighton Vander Esch at linebacker. They've lost Jordan Lewis and Anthony Brown, 2 corners. And it's definitely had an effect. They haven't really been able, for whatever reason, these last 2 games to get their pass rush going. And that's sort of been the defining characteristic on Dan Quinn's side of the ball. They just have 1 sack in the last 2 games. And that was by Micah Parsons in the first quarter last week. And then I think on offense, Dak Prescott's had an incredible run of misfortune in throwing interceptions. I mean, He's made a few bad throws. He's had a few plays where his arm's been hit the last 2 weeks and he's thrown a pick that way. And he's had a couple of balls that have been deflected into the air. He says it really upsets him, irks him to watch tape and see other quarterbacks throwing the ball and drilling defensive backs right in the midsection, and they drop them, but his are getting tipped up in the air and intercepted. And, he's a guy who throughout his career in the NFL has really had a reputation that he's earned for protecting the football. But they've suffered for a few turnovers recently as well at the quarterback position.
I mentioned in the first segment too, Ed, that I thought that last pick 6 for Jacksonville, that was not his fault. That ball was well-thrown ball, should have been caught. But if you could, Ed, just give me a comparison for a second. For a long time between Dallas and Philadelphia, the debate was between Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz. Well, that debate's over. But now along comes Jalen Hurts. Just compare the 2 quarterbacks, if you would, and tell me in terms of the quarterback spectrum, meaning are they rising, are they falling, have they plateaued? Where do you see each of these 2 guys?
Well, to be honest with you, when we were looking at these, I think we all identified the Eagles and the Cowboys as the 2 teams that were going to compete for the division title. And to be honest with you and your viewers, the thing that separated the 2 teams most obviously to me was Dak getting the check mark at quarterback over Jalen Hurts. Never anticipated, and I don't think most people did. Even guys who played expected Jalen Hurts to evolve as a pocket passer the way he has. I think we all had great respect for his ability to run. To me, he's a better runner and not quite as good a thrower as Dak was when he was at his very best as he evolved. Now, he doesn't run like he did, since the injury that he suffered, the fractured ankle and leg that caused him to miss almost an entire season. He's not the same runner, not the same athlete as he was back then. But he played a very similar game to what we see from Jalen on a smaller scale. I think. But yeah, I think Jalen Hurts has had a magnificent season. He's got great talent around him, as Micah Parsons was pointing out last week in his controversial remarks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is one of the top. He's got to finish in the top 3 in the MVP voting in the NFL. He's, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, or Patrick Mahomes for me.
Right. Hurts will probably now fade out a little bit. If, in fact, he misses a couple of games, that's a shame. Let's digress for just a second, talking about that type of quarterback, Ed. And I've made the point here that you can't – a lot of talk in Philadelphia as to some bad play calling last week in Chicago and how the injury to Hurts should not have happened. He was running the ball too much, throwing the ball too much. But to me – if you're gonna go 13-1 with Jalen Hurts, part of the reason why you're doing that is because the ball's in his hands so much. But if you look at the league as a whole, Trey Lance goes out in week 2. Lamar Jackson now has missed 2 weeks in a row. You have, of course, Jalen Hurts getting hurt. Justin Fields missed a couple weeks. Is there any way with these type of quarterbacks that are bringing so much excitement to the league, is there any way to minimize the risk of injury and still yet allow them to play as well as they do?
I don't think you can maximize what they contribute as a runner if you're going to try to minimize the amount of contact that you're subjecting them to. I think I saw a stat the other day that Hurts has been he's had 104 design quarterback runs this year. That's the 4th most in the NFL in the last 20 years. I think the only player who's been hit more in a season at the quarterback position than he has been is Lamar Jackson several times. And you've seen that. What did Steve Young used to say? There are no old running quarterbacks in the NFL. They all eventually get hurt. And that's what happened to Dak Prescott too. You remember he was in the open field and he tried to push down the defender and he landed awkwardly and he lost an entire season. He's a big, strong guy. Like Hurts is a big, strong guy. Like Lamar Jackson's a big, strong guy. Like Cam Newton was a big, strong guy.
That's right. I remember it happened to Tony Romo in a preseason game. When he hurt his back, and he
wasn't really a runner.
I know, but I'm just saying it can happen on any play in which the quarterback is exposed as a runner. Something terrible could happen. It's just the way of it. Sal Powell was kind enough to send me a stat from ESPN.com about quarterbacks that have been contacted the most, and I guess by contacted it's as a runner or a sack or even just a hit while he's throwing. Well, of the top 5 quarterbacks, 4 are in a playoff position right now. So I just don't think it's a matter of. The only one that's not is Justin Fields, actually, as you mentioned. So I don't think there's any way around it. Your quarterbacks. It's just the way of it right now, Ed. I think the way the game is played.
Well, I mean, the Eagles have the best offensive line in football. I think almost everybody would say, right? But so they're capable of protecting Jalen Hurts if he's going to drop back and be, a play action passer, a pocket passer. But you're losing. Look at all you lose when you don't have him run the football. Now, I imagine over time, and certainly as he gets into his second contract, as we saw with Dak Prescott, he got into his second contract. He's coming off a major, season-ending injury. All of a sudden, your coaches are like, hey, we need this guy. We need him to be there more than we need him to be there as a runner and a thrower. So I expect that as time goes by in Jalen Hurts' career, he'll run less and he'll throw more.
All right, and let's circle back here to Saturday, if I might. The Cowboys, my theory was perhaps they were looking a little bit past Houston, a little bit past Jacksonville. They had this date obviously circled on the calendar, and now here comes Philadelphia, but without Hurts. It appears, of course, according to many, including Adam Schefter, that it will be Gardner Minshew Saturday and not Jalen Hurts. How do you see the Cowboys now preparing for him? They got to be breathing a sigh of relief here. And do you think that pass rush now will have much more success with Minshew back there as opposed to number 1?
Well, I think the Eagles on their final official injury report have finally listed Jalen Hurts as out, and Gardner Minshew therefore is presumed to be the starter. They played Gardner Minshew, the Cowboys did, in the final week of last season when Nick Sirianni was protecting his starters, and Mike McCarthy took the opposite approach and played all of his guys, trying to create momentum for the playoffs. Yeah. And it's funny that that's the phrase we hear again this week from Dak Prescott and others in the locker room in Jacksonville after they lost. It's all about creating momentum for the playoffs. Now, I think the Cowboys, and this comes really from being out there the last 2 days at the Star and talking to Dak Prescott, I mentioned J-Ron Curse and what he said about the defense. You know, Dak said, we need to make a statement to ourselves. We need to go out there and demonstrate that we believe we're one of the best teams in the league. And we need to go show that against one of the best teams in the league because they faltered so badly against these, AFC South teams that they expected to be easy marks for them.
Exactly.
So I don't know that they were looking ahead to Philadelphia. I think you could certainly say against Houston that they would admit that they probably didn't take that game as seriously as they should have. It's the worst team in the league, and they almost suffered a catastrophic loss in that game.
Right.
But I think that they go into this game feeling like, especially with Hurts being out, I mean, what are the consequences for the Cowboys and how they feel about themselves and how they're perceived around the league if they go out against the Eagles and let them clinch the division on their field, clinch the number 1 seed in the playoffs on their field, and they do it with their backup quarterback starting for the first time in a year.
Right. I agree with you, Ed. And I think you're going to get Dallas's very best effort Saturday. I think it's going to be a tough day for Philadelphia to win that game. Now, Ed, I got about a minute and a half here, and it's bonus time. It's overtime. And I want to squeeze this one in. Just get your take. Your ear is well to the ground in the National Football League. After Week 15 and the egregious officiating at the end of the Commanders-Giants game, where they appear to it seemed to me to be a ridiculous penalty called at the end on Terry McLaurin, and then the lack of a pass interference call. It was almost comical. Give me your thoughts on the officiating there and whether you think the league is going to have to do something, even cosmetic, to address the officiating.
Well, I covered the NFL owners meetings, the winter version that was here in Dallas last week, and a big part of the conversation then from the league was talking about the roughing the passer and these poor calls that have been made in that regard, and whether they should be subject to replay. And there's going to be dialogue about that, as there probably is almost every year with the competition committee going into the spring meetings. And I haven't heard the league really give a great explanation for what happened at the end of that Washington game, where they're in a goal line situation. They lose a touchdown because Terry McLaurin says, hey, I checked with the official and they said I was lined up on the line of scrimmage. He couldn't wait to throw the flag. And then you're right. No pass interference on that call. It was ridiculous.
It was. And you're right about the official. The official's hand was in his pocket. It was just like he just could not wait to unleash that flag.
Please snap that ball. I got a flag I got to throw.
I know. And McLaurin was totally – it's such a shame because it really may cost. Now, Washington's still in. They're still a 7 seed right now, but, boy, that's dicey. They go out to San Francisco this week. That is not an easy one. All right, listen, Ed Werder, I really appreciate you stepping in here. The time segment went in like a flash, and it was great having you on. And if I may be so bold, love to have you back if Dallas – Dallas is going to make the playoffs. It'd be great to have you back, maybe to talk about a big playoff game in a few weeks' time. All right?
Yeah, the Cowboys could go as a wild card, have to go play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who aren't what they used to be, but they've never beaten Tom Brady in their history. And if you win there, you probably get to go play the Eagles.
That's correct. That's correct. And we'll see. And maybe they get some momentum going. Well, anyway, Ed, Merry Christmas to you. Thanks again for coming on. Look forward to talking to you again. All right?
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. Happy holidays.
All right. Ed Werder coming on. Love that guy, Ed Werder. He's been around since 1998 covering the National Football League for ESPN. He does a terrific job, just like our boy Sal. So we'll talk to both of them in the future. When we get back, I have to settle for this guy, my arch nemesis, and someone who I think is a made man, but he's still we still get along pretty good. And that's Tony Cutillo. We're going to talk some fantasy football. It's Tony's last appearance now, so everybody pay close attention to what Tony has to say. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football.
I grew up in a home, and I wanted my kids to have that. The process of buying a home seemed so daunting, but Christine and M&T believed in me. Everyone took an interest and helped me through the process. You don't get this kind of service everywhere. I closed on the house, and I didn't tell the kids. They were like, oh, you got the key? You closed on the home? They were so happy. M&T Bank made this dream come true for me and my girls.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at UGIES.com.
At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@WhisPearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@WhisPearl.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
It was late at night. I was browsing KennedyAuto.com when there was a knock at my door.
Hey, baby, what you doing?
Buying a car from John Kennedy Ford.
Online?
I let her in on the secret. KennedyAuto.com makes car buying easy. That got her attention.
Can I go for a ride?
Let me get my coat. KennedyAuto.com. Enjoy your ride.
Welcome back this week in Pro Football Week number 16, the National Football League here on JAKIB Sports. By the way, would you give me a follow, please, at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports here on Twitter. And you can follow this guy, too, if you have absolutely nothing else to do when you're contemplating ending your life. That would be, of course, the Jigsaw himself, my good friend Tony Cutillo, joining me to talk really for the last time this year. We're going to talk some fantasy football. Tony, how you doing?
Listen, man, I got shaped up and everything for the last show of the year, Pat. I'm ready, man. I'm ready.
I like to say you look good, Tony, but, I don't lie well on television. So.
I try, man. It's hard. Jigsaw's hard to look good. You know,
it looks fine. The Jigsaw looks just fine here. And we get into what for many leagues, Tony, is the final week. And boy, what a week. I mentioned in the outset that the weather is just going to be truly frightful for this Christmas weekend. Tell me what that does when you're making up your rankings and you're looking at games like I was mentioning, Tony, minus 11 wind chill Buffalo at Chicago. So you're looking at that. What are you doing with Josh Allen? What are you doing with Stephon Diggs, other guys like that in terms of your rankings?
Yeah, obviously the first thing I'm looking at is, whether it's home or away, are these cold weather teams or not, right? Is it a dome team like Minnesota going outside? Right. Like Kirk Cousins doesn't like being in the cold, right? So obviously that's first and foremost. And second most, the wind is huge. Because it sways so many different factors. The game plan, are you going to have more yards out in the flat? You're going to do a little more run, pass, catch, no more deep balls. So possession guys like a Stephon Diggs are more important than a guy like Isaiah McKenzie, who's not going to get that deep ball. So a lot of things you got to put in perspective when you're doing your rankings.
Yeah, I know. And I think
it's tough.
Well, Buffalo, there's no more of a cold weather team in the league than Buffalo. I don't think they'll be fazed by it, but that the wind coming off Lake Michigan, I just don't know if that's going to be a very high scoring game in Chicago.
I mean, listen, Josh can sling it, but I don't know if he could throw through that.
Yeah, I know, but he can sling it. He is a formidable quarterback. I'll certainly say that. But then, you got some Tony, you got some quarterbacks now. I want to talk to you about this and give me give me a hierarchy, if you will, now with the Minshew now being named the starter going into Saturday's game in Dallas. You got some quarterbacks like Minshew. Now, Daniel, I'm hearing a lot of positive talk about Daniel Jones. Tony, I don't see it. I still not sold on Daniel Jones, but he's playing better. Okay. Brock Purdy, the quarterback in San Francisco. How are you ranking these guys in terms of somebody maybe having to stream a quarterback for their title game?
Yeah, you said it's perfect word there, man. These are streamers, right? So, the problem I have with Minshew, Pat, is everybody forgets that Dallas has a pretty good defense out there, right? So, as good as our O-line is, I have a hard time believing Minshew Mania is going to go off, right?
I know.
Listen, I love Brock Purdy, but when you have bruised ribs, it's a tough injury, man. So Kyle Shanahan's going to run the heck out of the ball out there. So Daniel Jones is my guy. I like Daniel Jones. He doesn't pass our eye test, Pat, right? But he's got some really, pretty solid receivers. And listen, if you got Saquon Barkley in the backfield, I mean, you also have to remember this, Pat. They lose guys like Sterling Shepard, Kenny Galladay's a bust, right? And Kadarius Toney's gone. He's making guys like Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, right? And Darius Slayton, household names.
Yeah, I know. I know. So you would go Jones over Purdy or Minshew.
Yeah, I really would.
Well, Minnesota's defense not that good. I can understand that. I picked up Minshew myself because I had I was down to Deshaun Watson, who has not exactly lit it up since taking over. That is not the same so far. That is not the same Deshaun Watson as the one who was playing in Houston, right?
No, he needs to find another massage parlor or something.
Yeah. He's a little tense. All right, that's probably what it is. You're right. So you got Cleveland -9 wind chill.
That's another one.
I'm sure he'll be slinging it all over the yard.
Yeah, Stefanski's going to be running a lot with Hunt and Chubb in that game, I'm sure.
All right, so let's focus on that Eagle-Cowboy game. We're talking with Tony Cutillo, the Jigsaw Man, at Cutillo23. Did I have that right?
Yes, you got it, buddy.
And follow him on Twitter, and he's got about 8 other handles. Most of them are aliases. It depends upon who's after him.
Never know. It's the Italian.
Focus on the Eagles-Cowboys. Who do you like? Now, this is a dome game, so, the Cowboys, you'll have the full arsenal offensively for both teams, whatever the Eagles choose to do. Who do you like here?
Yeah, listen, this is a tough game. I'm going to take the points if I'm a betting man. I'm not going to take the money line because I'm not sold that the Eagles are going to be able to go in Big D. This is a different Dallas team, right? Minshew, he's not facing the New York Jets. He's facing the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
As much as I love our system, Pat, I'm going to tell you, man, it's going to be a really, really tough game. I was already looking at this going, I don't know, man. New Orleans is next. Yeah. So, Micah Parsons going to wreak some havoc. There's going to be a lot of, talking back.
I know what you mean.
We can win. I will say we can win because Dak Prescott, 11 picks in the last 7 or 8 weeks since he's played. So he's going to turn the ball over. Right. So if our defense doesn't win this game, we don't win.
How about, though, in terms of fantasy, guys? Tell me how far are you dropping A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and what about Miles Sanders? Does Sanders actually get a boost in your rankings going into this?
Yeah, huge boost. You know why? Because the whole talk to Sirianni was, why did you run so much with Jalen Hurts, right? Why didn't Miles Sanders get a carry? You know how this narrative plays out. So they're going to come in, they're going to run hard. Listen, Goddard's back. Right? That's a huge piece. Number one is a blocker, but number two is a guy's going to take a lot of traffic off, that pressure off of A.J. Brown.
All right. Well, my dinosaur, my Fred Flintstone league that I'm in is it's TD. It's not TD dependent, but it's TD accented. So I've got A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. Who you starting?
I start Dallas Goedert.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that. I
was going to say that. Listen, because again, you got to look at the quarterback, right? So, and even though A.J. Brown does like the slants, a lot of these passes, the seam routes are going to be open, and that's going to be Dallas Goedert. So I really think he's going to be the guy this game.
All right, so give me some other jigsaw pieces this weekend in the frigid NFL landscape, as John Facenda would say. Give me a few chestnuts you think are out there, Tony, that somebody could drop in there this weekend.
Well, I will say, I think KJ Osborne must listen to this program because 2 weeks ago I mentioned him, right? He's been going off ever since, Pat. 21 targets, right? 15 for 195 and 2 in his last 2 games. And he's going up against the Giants, who, again, can lead out some big games. So I like KJ Osborne this week. And on the other side, I like the guy we met earlier, like Isaiah Hodgins this week. This guy's just been very, very serviceable from the wide receiver position. And don't leave out, this could be a huge name. Shaheed in New Orleans, Pat. I don't know if you've seen these numbers this guy's putting up. He's averaging 27 yards per game, man. It's insane. Or per catch. It's nuts.
I know,
it's
but
absolutely nuts.
That's fair. When there's a big roof over their head like there is in New Orleans. But I don't know, Tony. About
but listen, there's no Olave this week. There's no Landry this week. So he's going to be the guy. And 2 names real fast. This could be a huge week for Jaylen Warren from Pittsburgh. If you're looking for a streaming option, Ramondre Stevenson had 19 for 172 against Vegas last week. And every week, Warren's getting more carries. And he scored again last week. So I think Harris and him are both going to be serviceable. So if you're looking for a number 2, look at Warren. And also don't forget Tyler Algier, who's consistently becoming the number 1 running back in Atlanta.
All right. And I just want to say here, Tony, and wrapping up here, God bless my older brother, Tom. He's in our league. And each week he has to struggle with a decision because he's got Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. And last week, Rodgers at home against the Rams. That's a safe pick. Nothing wrong with that pick. He takes Rodgers, who hands off 3 times for Packers touchdowns, and Kirk Cousins goes off like a volcano in the second half. What are you going to do? The moral of the story in any fantasy league is pick a great quarterback and don't pick another one.
You know what? You know what's funny? This year more than any, Pat, like everybody says, stream a quarterback, get the guy late now. And next year, I'm going all in. Give me Hurts. I want a number 1 guy week in and week out. I don't have to worry about it.
Good enough. Well, Tony, you've been a great addition to this program. It's great having you on every week. And it was really a lot of fun. And I love the sage advice you give and, of course, the jigsaw pieces. And I look forward to doing it for years to come, assuming that you don't have any parole problems or anything like that. It'd be just great to have you on all the time. All right, pal?
Been a pleasure, man. I really appreciate it, man.
Merry Christmas to you and to the family. And we'll see you around the neighborhood, all right?
Sounds good, buddy. Have a good one, man.
All right, Tony Cutillo there. That's it for my fantasy segments for the year. We got a few weeks to go yet in this show, but we'll have plenty of playoff football to talk about then. It's always great to have Tony on. All right, when we get back, how about Ryan Kramer join us from Sean Greed's partner? We'll talk about some overs, some unders, and some incredibly close games every week in the National Football League. Probably the same this week. That's next on This Week in Pro Football.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go, Eagles.
UGI
First Bank is a true community bank with offices located throughout eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Being a First Bank customer comes with access to personal bankers, ones who know you and your business almost as well as you do. Joe Calabro is a regional president of First Bank and has been a leader and a lender in the southeastern Pennsylvania market for over 30 years. Call their Westchester office, 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com. Where do you tailgate when your team's away? Join Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill for their first ever Birds Tailgate Party on Sunday, September 25th, starting at noon under the tent. Enjoy a full tailgate buffet from only $26.95 per person, along with specials at the bar. Celebrate with friends cheering on our hometown team. Judd's and Jackson's at Spring Mill Athletic Club. Visit juddsdining.com for more details.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spend. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football here on JAKIB Sports. Pat Callahan joining you to talk about the National Football League. How about giving me a follow on Twitter at TWIPFPat, the network at JAKIB Sports. And you can even follow this guy if you want. He is Ryan Kramer, the co-proprietor of the Sports Gambling Podcast and Bet SGPN. Ryan, how you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me, Pat. Coming behind enemy lines a little bit for me, but if there's one thing we can always agree on is down with the Cowboys.
Well, I guess so. I guess certainly that's the mantra here in Philadelphia. But earlier in the show, I had Ed Werder on. Ed's been covering the NFL forever for ESPN and especially Dallas. But I get the sense, Ryan, and give me your thoughts here. I think the Eagles are going to have a very tough time because I think Philadelphia – and Tony Cutillo, my fantasy guy, alluded to it in the last segment that the Eagles could almost, Ryan, treat this as a preseason game. They got the Saints and the Giants at home to finish. All they need to do is win one more, and they lock up the one. Whereas Dallas, coming off 2 terrible games, I think will be loaded for bear. How do you see this game?
You know, you can make that argument, but what if the defense is wearing down and we're reading between the lines with some of the stuff that Micah Parsons saying about his workload, the back end injuries, the linebacking injuries, right. Van Der Esch. I think this is a key element because what kind of quarterback is Gardner Minshew? Right. And shout out to Coach Leach. He is down, Gardner Minshew is down there giving the eulogy at his funeral, but he's an air raid guy. And what does the air raid like to work? It likes to work that short middle part of the field. And I love that Dallas Goedert's coming back. And as much as you can make that kind of emotional or rally cry for the Cowboys here, I think the other side is the vets understand they win this game and maybe they're looking at 2 games of rest down the stretch or at least 1.5. And so, yeah, I mean, it's also a rivalry. It's a Cowboys, Eagles. They're always going to get up. And I kind of almost like this being the spot that Minshew has to come in. Rest of the team will certainly be rallying. And I think the matchup for me is I love the Eagles defense against that offense.
Okay. All right. I know we were talking earlier with Ed about the propensity that Dak Prescott has shown to throw picks. I think a number of them haven't been his fault, but the Eagles, a tremendous turnover team. They lead the league in turnovers. So you're right. So there may be a good deal of cause for optimism in terms of Eagle fans watching this game, but it just strikes me, Ed, I'm sorry, Ryan, if the Cowboys get out early, I think you could see the Eagles maybe go preseason on this game, but we'll see how it plays out. Tell me some props that you might like on this game. I'm interested particularly, Ryan, if you've got them, like Minshew, his over-under, and even A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. Where does Vegas see them now in terms of their production for Saturday?
Well, I mean, certainly you mentioned Minshew, and I think, His passing prop is sitting there, touchdowns. It's 1.5 juice to the over, which is a disrespectful stance that Vegas is saying. They're saying, look, they're not going to be leaning on him to throw too many.
Yeah.
From a yardage standpoint, 221.5. He's about 18 yards lower than Dak, who's at 239.5. Again, I think they're not necessarily factoring in the disadvantage that the Cowboys currently have in the back end. And I've seen Gardner Minshew be successful in short bursts. And so if I was looking to play a Minshew angle, I don't mind going to that over 1.5 passing touchdowns or the yardage prop, because to your point, even in the world where they get down, they're going to be passing. And I think even if it's a neutral game script, they have an advantage passing the ball here with A.J. Brown, with Devonta Smith. And which brings me to another guy I like, Quez Watkins, who has shown chemistry with Gardner Minshew in the past. 2 of his best 3 games last year were when Gardner Minshew was starting. And so, I think I know a lot of people will think, hey, Miles Sanders is going to have a great opportunity. That running game, maybe you play the Miles Sanders anytime touchdown, but I prefer to play some Minshew stuff here. I think that there's a chance that he has to play more than one game. And so I certainly think having Minshew go out there, dust it off, and show the passing game can still move the ball is going to be part of the game plan.
All right. Talking with Ryan Kramer here from the Sports Gambling Podcast at BetSGPN. Ryan, let's look around the league here a little bit. I've made a frequent mention on this high-quality program about the weather this weekend. So give me your thoughts there about it's going to be brutally cold in a number of NFL cities on Saturday. Outdoor venues like Cleveland, Chicago, even Pittsburgh Saturday night. That's terrible. So how does that influence what you're thinking about here in terms of, obviously, over-unders are probably the lowest of the season probably coming into this weekend. And also, Ryan, underdogs almost swept the table last week. I think the Packers may have been the only favorite to cover. Every other underdog covered. So give me your thoughts on those 2 things going into this weekend.
Yeah, I think first, it's the time of the season when it's valuable to have points because the games are going to be contested a little bit more closely. And maybe that's all we're seeing there with the late dog stretch. As far as the totals, boy, it's amusing to see an NFL total bounce down to 31 like it did in the New Orleans-Cleveland game. Now, it does seem like, in general, the weather reports are trending positive because mostly it's the wind that will cause these games to turn into mayhem. If you remember that Bills-Patriots game from a couple years ago.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
It was just you couldn't play offense one direction because the wind was so bad. And I think what they're projecting right now is that New Orleans-Cleveland game, the wind coming off the water, certainly is going to have an impact there. Also in Chicago, we're expecting very cold weather and winds in the 25 to 35 mile an hour range, which from a betting perspective, if you're going to neutralize the passing game between the Bills and the Bears, who does that assist? Well, we kind of just watched this game with the Bears and the Eagles. Now if you limit the passing game for the Bills, that almost gives the Bears another advantage. And so you also sprinkle in the Bills looking ahead maybe to the Bengals, and the spot so much resembles last week that in terms of weather, like that's where I look to gain the edge, and maybe sprinkling in your underdog take too. It just seems like a great opportunity in what's going to be a lower scoring game to take a lot of points because points are more valuable at that point.
Well, there you go. That's a good segue because I just wanted to mention, though, before we get to that, 56 games this season. This is courtesy of my boy Sal Powell, too. 56 games this season decided by a game-winning score in the final 2 minutes of regulation or overtime. Boy, the NFL just prints money. They look at last week and the finish that happened in Las Vegas and the finish of that Sunday night game, as crazy as that was. It's just amazing, Ryan, some of the wild swings that bettors or just fans have had to witness. Imagine if you've got the Commanders in that game Sunday night and they're literally robbed, I think, of a victory at the end of the game.
I mean, as a Giants fan, I don't know how much I feel they're robbed, but yeah, I mean, it is what's wild about the endings of these games is it feels like we're on this stretch of now like 3-4 weeks of, wow, I've never seen that before. That's the first time I've seen that. And, the Raiders Patriots game comes to mind as just an absolute, what was going on there? You're telling me a Bill Belichick coach team just randomly decided to play the Fumble Rooski? And
I don't know. Jacoby Myers. He wanted to be a hero, Ryan. Myers said that, and he was a hero. He was
for
a
the
hero.
wrong team. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. By the way, I love the way the Giants played Sunday night. Saquon looked absolutely outstanding, and I love the fight in the Giants. And the Giants, all they need to do to make the playoffs, the Giants win against Minnesota, not an easy one on the road, but if they could do that, and then all they need is either a Seattle loss or a Detroit loss, and of course Washington has to lose to San Francisco. I think that's going to happen. I think the Giants will clinch.
It's wild to think that they can clinch this week. I mean,
I know, isn't it? You're right.
They went over their win total of 7 last week, and honestly, if you look at the situation, you mentioned 56. I think it was score games or final score games.
Right.
How many of those have been the Vikings or the Giants? Two absolute coin flip teams.
That is
and
true.
So it seems like this is one of those matchups. Which coaching staff do you trust more? Because both teams have shown weaknesses. But I will say, as a fan of the team and as someone who bets on football, watching the Giants have a plan in every game. Now, sometimes that plan hasn't worked, like trying to guard the Eagles receivers with man coverage and not going to zone. But I love the determination and the consistency to continue to have that plan. And so, yeah, I honestly like the Giants catching 4 points this week feels a lot like the Giants catching 4.5 points last week, where the coin flip keeps happening. Let's just be on the right side of it. And when you can catch more than 3 points, that's your coin flip right there.
A couple picks, by the way. Ryan Kramer, presented by the good folks at UGI. Let's get a couple picks out of you, Ryan. I see on this excellent website that you guys have here, the Sports Gambling Podcast, that both you and Sean both love Chicago for the reasons you were talking about a minute ago. Grabbing 9 points in that kind of condition seems like a pretty good number. Right?
Yeah, and we're starting to see that number trend down. There's 8.5s out there, maybe even some 8s. And I think it's just simply a play on like two things. One, the weather being a factor, and two, the Bills have much bigger fish to fry next week with Joe Burrow and the Bengals on deck. So yeah, absolutely grabbing the points there. Another one that I absolutely love, and this one has kind of grown on me, but I just really, really love this Green Bay Packers team heading down to Miami in a matchup that bodes well for what they like to do. This Miami team has let teams move the ball on them. Yeah. And last week was the first time all season that Aaron Rodgers had his top 5 receivers healthy and his top 2 running backs healthy. So I like them to build on what happened last week. And I think this is kind of the surprise upset of the week. Packers keep their playoff hopes alive here and win on the money line.
Yeah, Green Bay looking better, no doubt about it. And it bodes well for that receiving crew. It bodes well for future years. It looks like they have hit on a couple of guys there. But just one other game before I let you go, and that's New England, Cincinnati. The Patriots coming off, Ryan, a just incredible loss at Vegas against I think they're hosting a Cincinnati team that really appears to be hitting their stride. What do you think here?
In some ways, this feels a little bit like Cincinnati heading down to Tampa last week, and the line was a little bit puzzling. Cincy seems to be finding their groove, like you mentioned. Meanwhile, the other team has a lot of reasons going against them. I just can't imagine what it's been like to be in that locker room with Bill Belichick after giving up a win like that. I love the way that their defense has come out with a plan. Speaking of coaching staffs with a plan, and I love the way they've made adjustments. If you remember, they completely shut the door in the second half of that game. If not for that blown play, we'd be talking about another Raiders blown victory.
I know. That's right.
And so for that reason, I'm always going to be the contrarian that wants to buy low. So I would take the Patriots as a home dog here.
All right, Ryan Kramer, I appreciate you stepping in here. Sean Green off on another bender, and it's great that you get to step in. And good luck to the Giants Sunday. I think they had a real good chance to win that game, and I think I think Washington's going to have trouble in San Francisco. So I think the Giants could be popping some champagne corks this weekend. But I appreciate you stepping in here, and look forward to talking to you again either in the next couple of weeks or in the years to come. All right.
Well, happy holidays.
All right. Merry Christmas to you. Ryan Kramer joining me here. Let me talk some betting lines. How about that over-under? Cleveland hosting New Orleans. 31 is the over-under there, as the weather playing a big factor, as we said. All right. We're going to wrap it up when we get back. I just want to touch base again on some of that officiating and talk about the life and the career of Hall of Famer Franco Harris when we get back here on This Week in Pro Football.
UGI Energy Services knows how dedicated you are to your teams, and that's how they feel about their customers. UGI Energy Services, a natural gas and electric provider servicing Philadelphia and the surrounding areas for decades. They're your local partner for energy planning and budgeting with sound purchasing advice and direct pricing. UGI Energy Services values customers and believes in building honest relationships. Let them help you save money on your energy bill and make enjoying the game that much sweeter. Get started with a free quote today at ugies.com.
For the team at Cordasco Financial Network, a part of Mercer Advisors, financial planning is about more than just managing your money. They guide you in making retirement, tax, insurance, and estate planning decisions by creating a plan based entirely on your individual needs. Plus, Cordasco Financial Network professionals work one-on-one with business owners in creating and managing company 401k plans, IRAs, and defined benefit plans. They can help you maximize plan efficiency, ensure full regulatory compliance, and optimize tax obligations. Call 855-558-3500 or click the link in the description below to learn more. Let their team help you secure your future. 855-558-3500. Cordasco Financial Network is a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Andrew Garrett Incorporated, which is not affiliated with Cordasco Financial Network or Mercer Advisors. Client experiences vary. Successful outcomes not guaranteed.
Johnny Apple's Restaurant and Bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's Restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
All right, back to wrap up week number 16, the National Football League here this week in pro football on JAKIB Sports. Just a final thought. We talked a lot about the officiating here. I don't think, as Ed mentioned, I think you're going to see changes to replay. I think that's where they're going to focus on the officiating is. I think you're going to see more types of plays come under the auspices of replay, be it, remember they tried it a few years ago with interference. It was a big failure because the officials wouldn't overturn anything. I think there'll be more of an emphasis on that. I think you'll see that come back. I think you'll see the roughing the passer come back as more attempts are made to constrain the effects of egregious officiating mistakes like we saw last weekend in Minnesota. The Vikings had 2 defensive touchdowns negated by bad officiating calls, and luckily they came back to win the game anyway. And, of course, what happened Sunday night in Washington. All right, a word here before we get to the Week 16 schedule and the playoff possibilities. Just a word about Franco Harris, who died very surprisingly at the age of 72 this week, just 3 days prior to his number being retired by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why the Steelers had to wait until he was 72 is beyond me. He was a member of the Hall of Fame since 1990, so I think they could maybe have done this a little bit sooner, but they timed it with the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Harris was just on Sirius Radio just a couple days ago in an interview with Chris Russo talking about that play, that game, of course. in 1972 that I saw. I didn't think the ball hit the ground. I thought it was just an amazing play by Harris. He was that type of player, Harris. There was no reason for him to do that. He just instinctively followed the ball when it was in the air. He was in the Steeler backfield. At the time, Terry Bradshaw threw that ball. He ran out there following the ball. Lo and behold, picks it up just off the ground and wins that game. And really, that was the start of the Steeler dynasty. Now, the Steelers were now an unbelievable team, maybe the best team of all time in the NFL. They would have won 4 Super Bowls anyway, but that game was the start of it. Steelers did not win a Super Bowl last year. They lost the very next week to Miami, but that was the start of the Steeler dynasty. Franco Harris. Harris was many of you know in this area, Penn State grad, 12,120 rush yards, 100 total touchdowns, played in 19 postseason games. He was the MVP of Super Bowl IX, 4 Super Bowl titles, and of course the architect of probably the most famous play in NFL history. Rest in peace, Franco Harris. Okay, a look at playoff scenarios, if I might here. If the playoffs started today, that dreaded phrase, we know they don't, but in the AFC, your number 1 seed's Buffalo, and the NFC, of course, it's Philadelphia. In the AFC right now, it's the Miami 7 seed versus Kansas City 2 seed, the 6 seed LA Chargers at 3 seed Cincinnati, and the Baltimore Ravens, who keep winning despite scoring 8 points a week, would go to Tennessee to play the Tennessee Titans, the big moribund Tennessee Titans, who I lampooned a few weeks ago when they lost to the Eagles. In the NFC, you got Washington still in it. They'd go to Minnesota. In the they would it would be the Giants at San Francisco, be Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Washington would visit 2 seed Minnesota. Hard to believe Minnesota's a 2 seed in the NFC. What a difference between the NFC and the AFC. I think the AFC has Buffalo, Kansas City, Cincinnati, 3. Yeah, I think Philadelphia's the best team in the league. The next 3 are AFC teams, and of course then the 49ers. But look, Brock Purdy's a 3rd-string quarterback. At some point, Brock Purdy, the last player picked in the NFL draft, is going to show up, and probably at a very inopportune time for San Francisco. Xander, if you can call up that Week 16 schedule, we'll take a look at that. Yeah, as I mentioned, I talked quite frequently in this show about this schedule and about some terrible weather games here. Keep an eye on those Detroit Lions. Detroit, they can still make the playoffs. They've won 6 of their last 7. They're in Carolina. That's a good matchup for the Lions, I think, against the fading Carolina team. I mentioned Cincinnati is at New England. I think that's a big game in the AFC right now. The Bengals are playing very good football right now. Ryan mentioned Green Bay at Miami. That's a good game. Packers are coming on. And the Dolphins have got to right the ship there a little bit. Dolphins have not been playing well the last couple of weeks, so Miami's got to get it going. Seattle, Kansas City, very cold game. But the Chiefs right now, Mahomes is a magician. Patrick Mahomes is just a magician. I don't see any. Seattle is faded completely right now. The Giants, Vikings, Ryan spoke extensively about that game. Giants have a chance to clinch, a very reasonable chance to clinch this weekend. Need a few things to happen. Saturday night, as I mentioned, the Raiders at Pittsburgh. It's a shame. A pall now cast over that game due to the death of Harris. And then you have the Chargers, who are playing very well right now at Indianapolis. Our old pal Nick Foles gets the start for the Indianapolis Colts in that game. All right, that is going to do it here for week number 16 here on This Week in Pro Football. I'd like to thank Ed Werder again for joining me this week. And Ryan Kramer sitting in for Sean Green, and of course Tony Cutillo. Great job by Tony doing all his fantasy work all season long. And I want to wish everybody here from JAKIB Sports and from This Week in Pro Football, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah. And stay well this weekend. Terrible weather. It's going to get cold as hell. So make sure you layer when you do go out. And we'll have Sal Powell back next week. We'll be getting ready, and we're still going to start talking some playoff football soon. Very excited about that. Wish you all the best, and we'll see you next week on This Week in Pro Football.